So the first topic I want to cover is our schedule. And that's a really important one just because once you want to hit the ground running when we start next week and we start to explore these different technical topics, and especially being part-time, our schedule can be a little strange and convoluted. So we're going to start off by spending some time exploring what that looks like, both in terms of just our day-to-day schedule and also what it's going to look like over the entire course of Lambda School. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. We'll get started. Just a reminder though, if you have schedule questions, Google Calendar, always a good place to check. All right. So let's take a look at the structure of Lambda School. Part-time schedule. Okay, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Those 4 days in the evening, we will always be meeting. And by we, I mean you. I'll only be there sometimes. So, so let's take a look at what a sprint looks like. And there's a lot of terms I'm going to be defining here. Once again, you can review these in training kit. We're just trying to get a general idea. And I will say with the schedule, you're probably not going to have a good grasp of what this thing looks like until you go through a sprint, and then it'll make a lot of sense. But this will give you an idea. So our sprints are 2 weeks long. So you could think of a sprint as like a bite-sized chunk of related information. So a sprint consists of 4 topics and then a challenge at the end. So it's going to be 4 lessons, 4 projects, which are like homework, and then at the end of these 4, there's going to be a sprint challenge, which you could think of as being similar to a test. So I want to break down what each of these 2-week sprints will look like. So Monday is always intro day. So on Monday, you're going to spend a lot of your time just doing training kit prep. So at the beginning of a sprint, you'll just have some time to go through training kit, just like you did for the last half an hour, watch some videos, read through content, explore the ideas. The goal of this is not mastery. It's to just get yourself familiar with the ideas so we can go more quickly during our guided projects. So the first day of your sprint, these 2-week chunks, is going to be mostly you preparing on your own with a meeting at the end. So then Tuesday is going to be the first day of class, and every class day looks the same. It'll start with another half an hour just to do extra prep. So you can spend half an hour reviewing the material that we're about to cover, then 2 hours for guided project. So guided project is the lesson with me. So what we're doing right now would be like a guided project. And then at the end, you'll have half an hour to get started. So these lesson days, your lecture will be bookended. You'll have half an hour at the beginning to prep, 2-hour lesson in the middle, and then half an hour at the end to get started on your homework. So you'll find that this week, like I said, today is a little different, but Wednesday and Friday of this week are going to very closely mimic what these lecture days look like once we get started with Lambda proper. So you're going to have a lecture, your first lecture on Tuesdays, and then Wednesday of week A would be project time. So you have 2.5 hours to finish your project. So most of the project doing will happen here, and then at the end you have half an hour to meet with your group. So that's going to be a 2-hour lecture and then 3 hours, half an hour here, 2.5 here to work on it. So that is kind of the main structure here. So we're going to go through these days where we have lectures and then these days where you work on your project. And for the most part, sprints alternate between these 2 days. So then on your week A, Thursday will be another guided project. So Thursday and Tuesday look very similar. All right, here is where it starts to get confusing. So you guys all have a 5th day. And your 5th day might be a Friday evening, a Saturday morning, or a Sunday evening. So you will have a choice of which day is your 5th day. And when I say you have a choice, that doesn't mean that every week you get to decide which one. It means that at the very beginning of Lambda, so next week, at the beginning of next week, you will have to choose what works for your schedule. Is it Friday evening, Saturday morning, or Sunday evening? So once you choose a 5th day, you will be committed to that. And, if something happens and you have to change it, we can accommodate that. But the idea is that this will be your 5th day moving forward. So not all of you will meet at the same time for this project time, but you will all have a 5th day at some point during the weekend. So you can think of part A as being a prep day and then 2 lessons/homeworks. So Tuesday, Wednesday will be topic 1. Thursday / your 5th day will be topic 2. So that will be your week A. Week B is similar but kind of flipped. So we have, each sprint consists of 4 topics, 4 modules. So then because you just finished module 2, we'll start on 3. So on Monday of your 2nd week, week B, it's going to be another one of these lecture days, then a project day, then a lecture day, then a project day. And then on your very last 5th day, so at the end of week B, what you'll do is you'll actually have a sprint challenge. So a sprint challenge is a project that it's cumulative. It includes material from these 2 weeks. So this will be almost like an exam, but more hands-on. So you'll demonstrate your understanding of the material throughout the 2 weeks in your sprint challenge. So that is how your sprint weeks will work. So yes, I know, a little bit confusing. We have this alternating thing where week A, lessons are on Tuesday, Thursday, homework's on Wednesday, 5th day. Week B, it's reversed. But you guys will get in the swing of it, and it'll all make sense once you go through it. And always consult your calendar if you have any confusion about if it's a lecture day or a project day. So this is the most important thing you need to understand right now, is just what do these weeks look like. So starting, let me actually go, so it's going to let me go back. Let's go back. So starting next week will be a week A. So this launch week is a little weird because there's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday lecture. That will never happen again after launch. So starting next week, it's going to be week A. And then the following week, week B, and that's what our first sprint will look like. All right, so let's take a look at the general curriculum structure. So this is more of a broad look at what will your entire track look like. So there's going to be, so things are broken up into units. So I mentioned I will be your Unit 1 instructor. So for you guys, units take approximately 2 months. So your unit will consist of 3 sprints. So we just went through what a sprint looks like, followed by a build week. So the build week will be more hands-on. It will be, you'll apply actually everything from the unit to work on part of a larger project. So there's kind of this theme you'll see, which is learn, 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 apply what you learn. So at the end of each of these units, you'll have 2 weeks to actually go in and really get a hang of, I know it's called build week, but we're part-time, so 1 week is actually 2. So you'll have build 2 weeks to apply everything you've learned here in more of a professional group-like structure. All right, and then you'll do it again in Unit 2, in Unit 3, 4. And just to give you an idea of what your units look like as full stack, this is all in Training Kit, by the way. But we're going to start out with Web Fundamentals. Unit 2 is, actually, I've never taught Unit 2 or 3, so I might have this slightly reversed. But I know both of these have to do with front-end programming and just building out front-end applications. I can't remember exactly the difference between these two. And then Unit 4 is back-end and testing. So, so this will take you through all of the content of being a full-stack developer. So once you're through core curriculum, and this is the size of this is a little deceiving because core curriculum is actually over half of your time at Lambda School. So then you go into labs, which is actually 8 sprints. So that's going to be 16 weeks. So labs is all about hands-on. It's about building a project. It's really designed to simulate a real-world work experience. And then finally, you'll go into additional track-specific curriculum. So you'll have 2 more units once you've had a chance to really solidify the core curriculum. For you guys, that's going to be Java and computer science. So whereas this is really the hands-on full-stack web development stuff, your additional curriculum is a little bit more theory, extra stuff, the kind of things that'll look good on your resume, that'll help you with coding interviews, that'll round you out more as a programmer. And then at the end, we have something called Lambda X. So Lambda X is really oriented towards the job search. So there is literal time scheduled in here for you to apply for jobs. And then as well as that, there's also time for things like practice interviews, skill building. So this is really about both literally the job search in terms of literally applying, but also building up skills that's going to help you with interviews and help you in your job search. So Lambda X, it's 8 sprints, but really this could end up being shorter if you get hired because you will be applying for jobs at this point. So this is an idea of what the overall structure looks like. It's nice to look at this because it's exciting. It gives you a sense of what you'll be doing for the next year. But be aware that for right now, it's much more important that you understand what these 2 weeks will look like because this is what's coming next. So that is what our general schedule looks like. Now I'm gonna pop out of the slideshow real quick because I think that the schedule stuff is really important. So I wanna give you guys a chance to ask questions in Slido. For right now, I'm gonna be focusing on schedule related questions. Other questions I will save for the end of the lecture tonight. So let me jump out of here and see if you guys have any schedule related questions in Slido. Okay, let's see what we've got here. All right, for clarity, the build week at the end of a unit is actually 2 weeks. Yes, exactly. So each sprint and the build week is considered a sprint, would be 2 weeks for us. Does Lambda endorsement generally happen before Lambda X? No, it should happen during Lambda X, and I'll talk more about endorsement in a minute. We'll talk about the attendance policy. This is related to our attendance policy, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. Are the 5th days based on a first come, first served basis? No, they are not. You get to choose your 5th day. Do students start to lose what they learn in 1 through 4 in labs when they go in 4, 5, and 6? Not necessarily. I think that labs are a really good way to solidify what you've done. You might become slightly rusty during unit 5 and 6, but what's nice about, there's a lot of overlap. So even though the specific skills might be different, there's a lot of core programming skills that are going to translate. And as well, part of Lambda X is doing practice interviews, drilling things. So at the end of everything, you'll have a chance to just make sure you're really up to snuff on all these core skills. Are our flex days determined by our project team or vice versa? So they're actually 5th days, and the reason that I want to be technical about that is because flex refers to something else in Lambda school. So it is vice versa. Your group will be based on your 5th day, but you'll be assigned based on the day you choose. So you want to choose the day that works with your schedule. The whole reason we actually have the 5th day is originally it was Saturday morning for everyone, but we wanted to make this program available to more people with different schedules. So we switched it so you could choose. Question about, do you have to complete Lambda launch? I'm going to talk about attendance in just a minute, and this question will be answered then. All right, so once again, these other questions, if they're off topic, I'll answer them at the very end tonight, but how are the projects for build week determined? So that's actually a good question. I'm going to jump back into the slideshow to answer that. All right, so for build week, and I will give you guys a disclaimer that I personally am not directly involved with build week or labs. So sometimes I'm not the best person to ask for detailed questions, but I can answer this one. So the way we're doing build week is actually really cool. So you will have a prefabbed project for build week, but what you'll actually be doing is working on different parts of the same projects as you move through different units. So you'll actually be working with students in totally different cohorts. So in that way, you can be part of a team and everyone's working on a different piece. So in this build week, your focus will be front end stuff that you've been learning in unit 1. But then when you get to unit 2, you'll see a different side of the project. So my understanding is that build week, you're pretty much told what you have to work on, whereas in labs, there's a little bit more flexibility. But for questions about build week and labs, Once you get your TL assigned, they're a great person to talk to because they are a previous Lambda student who has actually gone through all of this. So sometimes for the stuff outside of the actual sprints, your TLs are way better people to ask because they've been through the experience as students. All right, so let's, oh, and one thing I wanted to mention about Lambda X, you'll be receiving a lot of support during Lambda X for the job search, but that actually continues even after Lambda X is finished. So Lambda School, at some point the curriculum ends, but you have, as long as you're endorsed, and I'll talk about endorsement in a minute, you'll have ongoing job support from us indefinitely. All right, attendance policy. So attendance is required. One of the ways we keep track of attendance is via your webcam, and we'll talk more about that Wednesday, but make sure you have a working webcam. That's a really important part of how we make sure that you are there. So the rule is that you may not miss more than 8 hours per month. If you have to miss more than 8 hours per month, you have to connect with your team lead to get an exception if it's applicable. So to that question of what if you have to miss your 5th day, can you catch up a different day? Yes, you can, but it would be considered missing hours. So you can do it a different day, it would be considered missing hours. If it's something where you've already missed your 8 hours and you're trying to do it a different day, chances are if you're a good student and you've communicated well and clearly it's just kind of a one-off thing, my guess is your team lead would be very flexible with you about that, but ultimately it is at their discretion. So attendance is a little bit different for launch. So launch is technically not mandatory, but highly recommended. So, and to convince you guys of this, the reason we do launch is because what happened before we had launch is that people's first sprints were very chaotic because they were trying to learn new technical material and figure out their way around at the same time, and that was a lot. So if any of you guys are thinking to yourself, oh sweet, I don't have to be here this week, just be warned. You might have a very stressful first sprint if you decide to miss launch. That being said, so during launch, if you have to be late for something, or if you have to leave early, or if there's a night you can't be here, there's no need to reach out and let us know. You can work on it on your own. These lectures will be recorded and posted if there's a better time. So it really is up to you guys for launch. However, that will not be the case starting next week. We have a strict attendance policy starting next week. So one thing I will just say explicitly is I, as your instructor, don't need to hear about anything attendance related. So for launch, if you're going to be late or if you have to miss a night, you don't have to tell me. And please don't. It's extra information. So you don't have to consult with me or anyone if you're going to be late for launch. However, starting next week, once again, I still personally shouldn't be hearing about it, but your TL will become your point of contact on that. So actually, speaking of TLs, let me just explain to you formally what a TL is. So a TL is a team leader. You will be put into smaller groups of about 10, I believe. And in that way, even though there's a lot of you and just one of me, we try to keep a really tight ratio between students and TLs. So that's someone you'll be meeting with every day. That's going to be the person who's in charge of your grading your assignment and making sure you complete things. And we'll talk about the grading system in just a minute. That's the person you talk to about attendance. It's really your first point of contact on everything. So that's really the person who tunes into how you're doing at Lambda School, which is good for me because I can't keep track of all of you guys, but my TLs are my view into your world so that if there's something people are struggling with, I find out. So the more you talk to your TLs, that's the way to really percolate information up to me because I do really want to know what's going on with you guys, and it can be tricky online. So it's really important both for you and for me that you're really in tight communication with your TL. So that will be assigned to you at the beginning of next week. So you'll know who your TL is and who your group is. All right, let's talk about academic expectations. So we do expect a lot of our students. We also give a lot to our students and offer a lot of support, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But this is not an easy course. It's not meant to be an easy course. The whole idea is that we're launching you into a new career in about a year. So yes, we're able to do that partially because we're really focusing on practical hands-on skills and trying to narrow in on what you really need to know and trim out all the fat. But it also means you're going to have to work hard. So, and that's also why we have a TL who's working so closely with you. So let's talk about how grades actually work in Lambda School, because it is not the traditional grading model. So you will, as mentioned, you meet daily with your team lead. So you'll have a 10-minute meeting. They will also they'll be talking over the code with you. So don't cheat. It's really obvious. First of all, we're adults here. And if you're not here to learn the material, why are you here? Kind of my question. So, but if you do cheat on your assignments, your TL is going to find out really quickly, because they are, of course, looking at your assignments, but they're also talking to you and making sure you can articulate what's going on with them. And so if you, so that is a daily meeting. And then as well, there's going to be a sprint assessment review. So at the end of each sprint, you'll have an assessment and a meeting with your team lead to discuss your performance on that. So our grading system is 1, 2, 3. That is literally it. Those are the 3 options. 1 does not meet expectations. So that means that, and we have very clear objectives on each assignment. So that shouldn't be a surprise if you get a 1, because we outline exactly what the minimum requirements are. If you do not meet them, you will get a 1. 2 is meets expectations. So a score of 2 means you completed the assignment. 3 is exceeds expectations. That we try to include stretch goals on everything. That means you went above. So your goal should be to get a 2. A 3 is great. Don't be pushing yourself to get a 3. The idea is those stretch goals exist for certain things will come easier to certain people. And if you're ahead, it's really great to use that time to learn a little extra. But a 2 is perfectly fine. You should be proud of yourself for getting a 2. It's nice to get a 3 here and there, but 2 is really what you're aiming for. And another note here is that we are also, and this will become more true once you move on to things like labs and build weeks, but we are, of course, interested in your technical skills, but we are equally interested in teamwork and collaboration skills, as well as career readiness. So Lambda School is comprehensive, and these 3 areas will become very important when we talk about endorsement. I'll talk about that in a minute. So at the end of your units, at the end of each sprint, you will find out if you, let me rephrase this. Okay, so at the end of each sprint, you may receive extra support hours. So depending on how you're doing, you may receive additional support hours. You can request these, but they may become mandatory depending on how you're doing. And then at the end of a unit, you may be required to repeat that entire unit. That is called flexing, and we will talk more about the details of flexing a little later. But just be aware that, that you may be required to repeat a unit. And actually, that reminds me, I know someone asked about flexing and if they were required to attend Lambda launch. And remember, Lambda launch is not technically required. So if you are flexing and you feel really comfortable with all of this, you're not required to attend. And then you will be assessed based on your labs as well. But I don't want to spend too much time on this because we have enough material as is. All right, I do want to talk about your endorsement. So endorsement is our version of graduation. So as mentioned, this is really not just based on technical skills. Career and teamwork expectations are very important. And those come up a bit more once you get into your build weeks and especially into your labs. I will say, we want to make this as transparent as possible for you. So there should be no mystery about if you're on track for endorsement or not. We will lay out exactly what you need to do to get there. And if you're falling behind, we will let you know. So this isn't some surprise at the end of you get endorsed or not. We want you to be endorsed. We're going to do everything in our power to get you there. And if you're falling short on one of these skills, we're going to try and help you get there. So your endorsement is the same as graduation. That means that you can say you finished Lambda school, it means we'll introduce you to our hiring partners. It means you have ongoing support from Lambda school throughout your career. So that is, wait, hold on. Let's see what we got. Yep, that's the basics of Lambda school. And as you've probably already noticed, there's a lot of stuff here that's very different from traditional school. We don't have classes in the same way. You're not taking multiple classes at once. You're kind of all focusing on one thing. We're alternating between more of lecture style approach versus hands-on. There's a big focus on career readiness. Obviously, our grading system is a bit different than the 0 through 100% letter grading system. So everything we have done here, we've designed to try to make this as practical and useful as possible. So I have a question for you guys, and part of me is just curious to see what you have to say. So I talked about this 1, 2, 3 grading system. 1 does not meet expectations. 2 is meets expectation. 3 is exceeds expectations. So this is probably new for you guys. You're probably used to this letter grading system. So my question for you is, what do you guys think about this? Do you think this is going to work better than the letter grade? Are you excited about this? Are you nervous about this? Do you have any thoughts about, why we chose to do it this way? I still feel that there's pressure to get a 3. I know what you mean. I am a bit of an overachiever, and the program I went through was similar in that they had stretch goals, and I always felt like I had failed if I didn't meet those stretch goals. So that is kind of a mindset issue, and we're going to talk more about this on Wednesday. So, all right, some people say it seems refreshing. Some people say it seems essentially the same, straightforward. I really like this, decreases competition. That is actually one of the reasons we chose to do it. So there's not as much, it's kind of a lower resolution system, right? There's only 3 options versus 100 options. So, there's this competition factor of, I got an 88% and my friend only got an 83. In our world, those would both be 2s. So yes, one of our goals is to decrease competition. And I say this as a very naturally competitive person, but it's not about competition. It's about mastering the material. It's not about where someone else is at. It's about where you're at. Cool. Well, that's fun to hear about your thoughts on that. So I am going to jump on over into Slido and see if you guys have any questions about whether it's attendance, grading, endorsements, and then we will move on to talking about our learning style at Lambda School. All right. Are the daily, weekly TL reviews one-on-one? Yes. So that's the idea, is that you won't get a lot of one-on-one time with me. Usually if you get one-on-one time with me, it's because you've gotten yourself buried in some problem no one else can solve, which is fun. But and I wish we could do more one-on-one time, but the idea is that we keep that ratio of TLs to students very low. I think it's 8-to-1. And yes, that time will be one-on-one with those reviews. Let's see. What percentage of students flex on average per cohort? I actually do not know the answer to that. That would be an interesting metric. That might be a good question for front desk if you want to try that. But if not front desk, I'm not sure where you would get that information. Is there an example? Oh, wait. Sorry, things are jumping around. Is there an example sprint that we can view? Well, this week is an example sprint, and as well, all the sprints you can see in Training Kit. And I'll even jump, now that you have an idea of the sprint, I'm going to go back into Training Kit in a minute so we can talk about how that Training Kit stuff correlates to what we just covered. How do we go about rescheduling our 5th day? So you will schedule your 5th day next week. You should not have to reschedule your 5th day. The goal and the idea is that you will not have to reschedule it. worst case scenario, if something changes in your life and you have to, you would talk to your TL about that. Right? Does the endorsement come with certifications of completion? I'm not sure if there is I don't believe there is a physical certification, but I mean, so Lambda School is not a traditional educational institute, so you won't be getting a degree. But yes, it's the equivalent of a certification of completion. It's an endorsement is the same as saying you have successfully completed Lambda School. You can put us on your resume. Our name is behind you. Does Lambda have any accommodation for those who cannot come to class during religious holy days? So we do have most major holidays off, but that might not cover all religious holy days. I haven't dealt with this personally because this is more something that would happen at the TL level, but everything I know about Lambda School says that we're going to do everything we can to accommodate you on that. So I wouldn't be worried about that one. Just talk to your TL about it. That sounds like a very good reason to have an exemption for those 8 hours, especially if you're committed to keeping up the work. Really, the rule is if you've demonstrated to your TL that you're committed to catching up and that you're on track, they're going to work with you as needed. Is there an option to go back and increase a sprint from a 2 to a 3 in any official matter? Not in an official matter, especially because really a 2 versus 3 doesn't officially matter to us. A 1 will lead to flexing, and we'll talk about the official policy on that in a minute. But from our perspective as a school, it doesn't matter if you got a 2 or a 3, and we're not really, there's not like a transcript that's going to say what you got on all your sprints, though I think from your dashboard you can see all of that. But you are certainly welcome to go back and try the stretch goals later, and that would be a good thing to do for your own benefit if you have extra time. Once again, for us, it's not about the grade, it's about the comprehension. So I would encourage you to get in the mindset of it doesn't matter if you got the 2 or 3, but if you can do something to learn more, that's awesome. All right, so let's talk about the learning style. Okay, let's talk about the learning style that we tried. Oh wait, sorry. Before we talk about learning style in Lambda School, I want to go back into Training Kit and talk about how to decode that now that we understand the sprint and unit structure. So if we go back to Full Stack Web, now that we understand what a unit is and what a sprint is, this might make a little more sense. So Lambda launch is kind of its own thing. It's essentially simulated to be a 1-week sprint. But the rest of these are all units. So Web Fundamentals is Unit 1, Web Applications 2, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4, and then down here are Units 5 and 6, which are your additional learning. So in between Node and Java is going to be your labs. So notice that each unit has 4 sections here. So these are 3 sprints and a build week. So this is broken down by sprint. So I think the question was, can I see an example sprint? You can click on any of these to see an example sprint. And if you wanted to, I would recommend clicking on User Interface and Git because that will be our very first sprint. Oh wait, is my screen unshared? I am so sorry about that. Let's go back and do that again. Apologies. All right, so I'll say that again real quick with the visual. So here on the sidebar, if you just go to Learn Lambda School and the course overview, I'll even post this link for you guys in Slack. So each of these is a unit. So these are your 4 initial units. After Node, you'll have your labs and then your 2 additional units down here. So we can see that under these units, you have your 4 sprints. So the 3 more standard sprints followed by the build week. So these are 2 weeks each. So if you want to see a sample sprint, any of these will do, but let's start with the very first one that we're going to be starting next week. So when you click on a sprint, it's broken down into the 4 modules. So the modules, once again, are 2 nights. It's going to be the first night would be the lesson, followed by the project. So a sprint will consist of 1 day of prep at the very beginning, 2 days for user interface 1, 2 days for Git, 2 days for UI 2, and 2 days, and then at the very end, the challenge. So this is an example sprint, and you can just scroll through and see an overview with a link to the sprint challenge. So this is not a mystery. You can take a look at everything that's to come. Each of these units, come on, and just like with launch, includes some prep videos, some example content with challenges, and then scroll, 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 scroll. And then at the bottom, there's some old recordings if you want to see an example of an old lecture, as well as, in most cases, there is just one project. This particular first night is kind of an exception where there are actually 2, but most of the time you're going to have just one project. So this looks very similar to the training kit content for Lambda launch. So one of the things Lambda launch is doing is getting you familiar with this format. All right, so now let's talk about how we learn in Lambda School. So our biggest guiding principle is what we call the IY loop. That's IWY. It stands for I do, we do, you do. And I might even, since we're in training kit, let's pull up the training kit content on the IY loop. So back to launch. Here's tonight. And cool, there we go. So the IY loop is the idea that we alternate between 3 stages of learning. I do, we do, you do. So I do is, we could think of that as you as kind of a blank slate, exploring the topic, just getting a feel for it. We do is us working together as an instructor and students, more of a traditional teaching type model. And then you do is you go off and actually apply the skills. So once again, it's the idea of you explore on your own, then there's formal instruction, and then finally you go off and apply the knowledge. So this is happening at all sorts of levels. So we can already see how this is mimicked in the general structure of a sprint, right? There's review time. The very first day of a sprint is going to be review time. And then as well, every time we have a lecture, there's always half an hour for you to just prepare. That's the I do time. We do would be the guided projects. So you can think of that as our lectures. And then you do is an independent project. So for each module, there's an independent project. So you'll have a day to just work on solidifying the knowledge. And then of course, for an entire sprint, there's also a you do at the end, the sprint challenge, that'll help you apply everything. So this is happening at all levels. On each lecture, you'll see this happening as well, where I'll ask you some questions about a topic you maybe don't know much about. That's like I do. Then I'll teach it to you. Then we'll do this a little bit in launch, but you'll see this a lot once we start unit 1, is I'll say, okay, now take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, take 3 minutes, try this challenge. So even within the guided projects, there's going to be this loop. And then when you think about the overall structure of Lambda School, this is happening at that level as well. There's periods of time, inside a unit. There's a we do time, which would be like the sprints, and then the you do would be the build week, or the labs is like our biggest example of you do. So we can see that all of this is happening all the time. And this is really a structure that's designed to help you learn. This you do is so critical because you really can't learn to program just having someone explain it to you. It's only once you start actually typing it out, trying it, seeing what breaks, seeing how to fix it. That's when you really start to learn. So as you've hopefully noticed, and hopefully will continue to notice, we're really oriented towards you doing hands-on stuff in Lambda School. So that is one of our core ideas behind Lambda School, and you'll see that everything is designed around this IY loop. All right, so now I want to talk about how we can help. I did mention that Lambda School is tricky. We expect a lot from you, but it's definitely not, I personally did not go to a college that's like this, but I heard from a lot of friends that a lot of the times in college, there's almost this like weed out the weaklings mindset. We are not like that at all at Lambda School. We want every person to succeed if possible. And we want to offer you whatever help we can. So let me talk about the support that we offer and how we're going to help you get through this. So I have another slide deck here. Let's go through. We'll talk more about the core mission of Lambda on Wednesday, but we think of ourselves as student obsessed, which I am frequently told by my friends that I care too much about what's going on here. Sometimes it's a compliment, sometimes it's not, but I know that I am a bit student obsessed, and when things are not working for you guys, I know I personally really want to help, and I see that at all levels of Lambda School. So I know that when we talk about these like terms like student obsessed, it sounds good, but you might be at the more skeptical, cynical people out there might be asking, well, are they really? I'm brutally honest. So I'm a good person to ask things. And I will say that my experience is that yes, Lambda School is really genuinely student obsessed. So that's good news for you guys. All right, we already talked about the 20-minute rule, but I will remind you, when you are stuck on something, student obsessed doesn't mean we will spoon feed you things. We sometimes give tough love, and we expect you, like adults and like software engineers, to go off and try to find the answer yourself. So as mentioned in launch, 20 minutes might be too long, but once we're into the technical stuff, 20 minutes is a really good amount of time to try and spend on a problem. But please don't be stubborn and proud and go past 20 minutes. This is a lot of material to cover, and you're going to have a hard time if you let yourself get mired in one problem. So after 20 minutes, please reach out by creating a message in a public Slack channel. So after you try yourself, the next step is ask for help publicly. I know I already said all of this, but it's important, so I'm going to say it again. We already talked about what a team lead is. This should be your first go-to line of support. So if you can't get help in a Slack channel, if you're stuck on something, or for really most of your needs, your team lead would be the person you go to. So if you're still stuck on something, please reach out to your team lead. All right, cool. Yes. So it is 1 TL per 8 students. So you're going to get a lot of one-on-one time with this TL, as well as meeting with your entire group. All right. And I think I might have, sorry, I'm trying to think. Someone asked if it's one-on-one time. I could be wrong about this, but I believe the daily meetings are not one-on-one. They're with your group, but you will get weekly one-on-one meetings with your TL, and they're usually really good about if you request extra time, one-on-one time. So if you can't get help publicly, if you can't figure it out, the TL is the next person to go to. As mentioned, if you are still stuck at that point, then I would recommend reaching out to myself or whoever your instructor is. So student support hours. So there are extra hours for you guys. If you are having trouble with something, you can request these hours, but they may become mandatory. So the conditions where you will be required to attend extra hours is if you can't explain parts of the objective. So once again, it's not just about the assignment you turn in. You need to be able to explain what you did. If you can't, you will have to take extra hours. If you earned a 1-star rating on a sprint challenge, then you will be required to do extra hours. If you are having collaboration concerns, that would be another case. Or if there's issues with career professional development, and if you miss an assignment. So these are all circumstances where you might have extra hours that you will be required to attend. So these hours, part-time hours are going to be 4 to 5 Pacific on a week. For us. And then there's a 2-hour session on the student's 5th day. So I wouldn't worry too much about this. It's just good to know, but if it comes up, your TL will explain all the details to you. But just be aware that support hours are going to be the first thing that happen if you're struggling. The next thing that might happen if you're struggling with material is flexing. So I want to be really clear about what flexing is and why it exists. Because it's easy to equate it with like having to repeat a grade in school, which is kind of like a scary thing. Flexing is something that from our perspective, we expect you to flex at least once. It's actually built into your time at Lambda School. If you never flex, you'll actually graduate early. So the idea is that we know that everyone's coming in here with different experience, and we need to be able to make this course work for people who have prior computer science experience, people who don't. My guess is that unless you either have some extra time outside of the scheduled Lambda hours, or if you have extra experience, you'll probably have to flex. To me, not flexing is almost like getting a 3. It means you went above and beyond. So I would really take the mindset of, yeah, there's a good chance I'll flex at least 1 unit. And that's totally fine. We go at a fast pace. And there's going to be some things that make more or less sense to you. It's so much better to be able to have that time to go through and really understand something than to push forward and be struggling. And it's almost like you're running with a limp. You know, if you're a runner and you sprain your ankle, you need to take the time to let it heal instead of moving forward. So flexing is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's great if you don't have to, but it's just part of Lambda School. So, and once again, it's based on the idea that everyone takes a different pace. Just so you know, I mentioned that things in Lambda are not just technical. We're interested in career readiness and teamwork. You may be required to flex even if you are technically proficient, if you are struggling in one of those other areas. So you will, so flex is based on a unit. So for us, a unit is about 2 months. And that means that at the end of this unit 1, some of you may be moving forward to unit 2, some of you may be repeating it. As has already come up, some of the people here are folks who have already gone through Lambda and are flexing unit 1. So you need to pass all 4 sprint, including the build sprint. And yes, not passing 2 challenges within the unit will immediately result in flexing. So if you get a 1 on 2 of your sprint challenges, that is an immediate flex. So the first one on a sprint challenge means support hours. The second one means that you will flex that unit. So don't be worried about flexing. Like I said, it's really not a big deal. But and if you're curious about the conditions for this, you can always check training kit, but you're also welcome to talk to your TL about this if you're worried about flexing. All right. So we also have student success that you can access via the front desk. So these are for non-technical issues, things like non-coursework inquiries, admission request letters. This is more later down the line. If you need loaner equipment, anything that's non-technical, not immediately related to the curriculum would be for student success. So let me show you how to contact front desk. I'll drag over Slack. So inside of Slack, really anywhere, you can type /front desk. And what this does is it pops out this form. So in any channel, you can just do /front desk, and this form will appear, and you can get in contact with them. So that's a really nice resource we make available for non-technical, non-coursework related questions. So one of the biggest takeaways of all of this is that you guys should be asking questions. Asking questions is super important. As we emphasize with the 20-minute rule, don't be asking questions when you can easily find the answer somewhere else. So be self-sufficient, but at the same time, we're here to support you, and this is hard, especially for part-timers. So please use this support. It's here for you. All right. We are just about at our halfway point in the lecture, so I'm going to see if anyone has any questions about either the IY loop or about different support we offer, and then once I'm done with those questions, we'll go ahead and take a 5-minute break. So let's see what we have. Is there a limit on how many times a person can flex? Yes, there is, and I don't think I have that information in front of me. If one of the TLs knows that, please post that in Slack, but I believe you can flex twice. but it might be 3 times. I'm so sorry for not having the answer to that. But yes, there is. So I will say the other side of it is, yes, we have built-in time for you to flex, but at the same time, this shouldn't be something that's happening all the time. So make sure that, so you can't just be in Lambda indefinitely, because we want to strike a balance between understanding that everyone has different speeds and is coming in with different experience, but also you need to step up enough to be able to move through the curriculum. And if you're constantly flexing, that's a problem. I also believe that you are not allowed to flex a unit twice. That also signifies to us that there's some other issue going on that's deeper than just pace. And thank you, Taylor, for posting that link inside of Slack that has all the flex info. Correct, there is no front desk channel. You have to actually submit a ticket. So if you can't pass the flex, so if you flex twice and you still can't pass the unit, I'm not actually sure exactly what happens. If there is some extenuating circumstance, some unusual thing has happened in your life that caused that, my guess is Lambda School will work with you. But if it's just that you really are not getting the material on the second pass through, that might be a sign that Lambda is just not for you. But once again, I'm not personally someone who deals with that, so I'm not sure the details on that. That might be I honestly wouldn't worry about that. It seems like a little bit of a worst case scenario thing, but if you really want to know the answer, front desk might be a good place to ask. Where can I find a link to the YouTube recording of this orientation? After we're done today, I will upload it and post these links in Slack. So it can take a minute to upload. There's a chance they won't be posted till tomorrow, but I'll try to get both the half-an-hour orientation and this full 2-hour video up tonight. Usually, just in general, usually they'll be posted either the night of or the next morning, depending on the time frame. Unfortunately, they can't be posted immediately because it takes time to process and render videos. So it's kind of a minimum 2-hour turnaround time for these videos. All right, it seems like the schedule's changed over time. No more coding challenges, paired programming, etc. Could you shed any light on the reasoning for this? I personally have not been part of those decisions, but I will say that the decisions I am part of are always based on student feedback, what's working, what's not working. So I can't necessarily tell you exactly why these things have been removed, but I will say that the thought process is always what's going to get our students to the point where they're career ready, where they have the skills they need. All right. And I see this post in Slack, but I'll just reiterate it here, which is that, yes, if you have to flex twice, the student will be withdrawn, and you have the ability to reapply after 6 months if you are withdrawn from the program. All right, let's go ahead and take our, actually, I'm just going to answer these 2 questions at this point, just to get them out of the way, then we'll take our 5-minute break. So which channel should we join for help, TLs, etc.? So you should receive invites to all the pertinent channels. You will have, once you get your TL group, you will have a specific channel for that group. You guys should already be in WebPT16 help as well as WebPT16, though that help channel really isn't going to go into play until next week. All right, and do we stick to the same project team throughout the cohort, or do teams change from project to project? I'm not sure if you're talking about your TL group or if you're talking about your labs group or your build week group. For labs and build week, I'm not actually positive how that works, but I think it's different every time. As far as your TL group, generally you will be in the same TL group for an entire unit, though it's not infrequent that either because of students shifting or TLs shifting, that sometimes it'll get shuffled around. So you can expect the same group for a unit, but that's not always going to be the case. All right, so let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. And then when we come back, we'll talk about some of the challenges of Lambda School, as well as your ISA. All right, I will see you guys in 5. All right, welcome back. So, all right, I've unshared my screen. I'm saying it out loud, so I remember to share it again when important. So let's talk next about some of the challenges of Lambda School. So the first thing I want to talk about is this term we use in Lambda called the $1 million moment. And this is, we talk about this in Training Kit, but this is kind of a funny term because it's really about this moment when you're just about to give up. So we think of the $1 million moment as being that moment of ultimate frustration. So why do you think we call it the $1 million moment if it's the moment of, if it's sort of the darkest moment? What do you guys think? Because it's the breakthrough. Exactly. I might not even read any other answers, even though I'm sure there are a bunch of good ones, because I think it's the aha moment, the breakthrough. So I want to say that not every moment of ultimate frustration necessarily becomes $1 million moment. And I think that really the difference between a dark moment that stays dark or somehow gets darker and a $1 million moment is responsibility versus blame. What are you going to do in that moment? Are you going to externally think about all the external things that if this were different, then blah, blah, blah? Or are you going to be asking, what can I do in this moment? And so, it's tempting in this program to say, oh, Lambda should have done this, Lambda this, it should be easier, they should have this. But that's not going to lead to $1 million moment. And I'll take this a step farther. Let's say we as a school really did screw up, and we screw up sometimes. It happens. We're going to talk more about this on Wednesday. If we really dropped the ball on something and we really made your life unnecessarily difficult, what are you going to do? And, and we'll talk about this on Wednesday, you should speak out and you should try and get things changed. But even if genuinely, and this applies outside of Lambda School too, even if genuinely you were set up in a bad way, still don't, if you can give us feedback to help us do better, that's awesome. But in that moment, it shouldn't be about what we did wrong. It should be about what can I do? And it doesn't matter if you're in an intentionally challenging situation or an unnecessarily frustrating, challenging situation. The question you should always be asking is, what can I do? How can I get through this? How can I push through? And really focusing on what you have control over and what you don't. Another thing we'll talk more about later this week. And those moments of taking responsibility and stepping up will transmute these dark moments into $1 million moments. So one story I want to tell personally, I was thinking about this as I was prepping tonight. What is $1 million moment I've had in life? And I've had a lot of these, and I definitely had a few of these myself when I was going through my own immersive. But the story I want to tell actually has nothing to do with programming. It's about when I hiked the Inca Trail in Peru. So if you guys don't know, Machu Picchu, this sacred ancient city in Peru, it's pretty cool. You can get there by train, or you can, if you book like 6 months in advance, you can hike this 4-day traditional path to get you there. So pretty cool. I would recommend it. So most people who do this pay a Sherpa to carry all of their stuff. But because I'm stubborn and because I'm from Utah, I was like, no way. So all the food and tents and stuff were being carried by Sherpas, so it was still pretty cushy. But I was like, all of my clothes and my sleeping bag and my pad, I want to carry them myself. And I was not in bad shape necessarily at the time, but I wasn't in great shape either. And it turns out the Inca Trail is really hard. The elevation is intense. Day 2 is like straight uphill. Day 3 is a lot more chill, but it's like 12 hours of hiking. And there were points in that hike, especially on day 2, where it was literally like 1 foot forward, 1 foot forward, 1 foot forward. My legs hurt so much. All I could think about was like next foot, next foot. and like, why am I doing this? You know, but at that point I was there, I was on the mountain. What else are you going to do? So, you know, I guess I don't think I had enough cash on me to try to bribe a different hiker to carry some of my stuff. But, so I did it, and to make matters worse, I was there with my best friend who was in great shape, and she was also carrying her bag. It was just me, her, and this Austrian dude were the only people carrying their stuff, like a big backpack on this trail. And her and this guy, Christoph, were both like at the front of the group, like, and I'm in the back, like sweating and collapsing. And what happened at the end of this is my perspective on fitness and physical health completely changed. And that was about a little over 5 years ago. And I'm in great shape now. And I really think that moment completely changed. You know, it was not long after that I moved to Texas to do code school. My program was 80 hours a week, and I still rode my bike there and back, which is like half an hour with hills, every single day. I'd, in my spare time, go to yoga. And I think that moment changed, because after I got done with the Inca Trail, I was like, well, I literally didn't think I could do that, but it turns out I can. So actually, I can do way more than I thought I could. And I learned that I was way stronger than I thought I was. And that was pretty rough. And I kind of don't want to do something quite that. I mean, it would be different for me now, but like, I don't want to necessarily push myself that far again. But it was such a breakthrough moment for me. And I think my quality of life and my health probably throughout my entire life will be better for that moment. So I know that was a bit of a tangent, but I really wanted to share that story with you, because I really believe in this idea of the $1 million moment, and believe that when we hit a moment of when our brain is telling us, I can't do this, don't believe it. It turns out that mostly you can do stuff. And usually if you, as I said, focus less on what do I wish were different and more on what can I do in this moment to make it better, you're going to find out that you're way smarter, way cooler, just way more badass than you thought you were. So push through in those moments. They will come. I'll give you a little warning. You might have to have one near the end of Unit 1 with JavaScript. It's a really challenging time. We're going to talk more about that later. But push through, and like amazing things will happen. I really genuinely believe that. So one thing I want to do now is, if you guys can, think about, and it can be large, small, doesn't have to occur in the Andes, but if you have a $1 million moment you want to share in Slack, I think that'd be cool. And won't have time to read all of them, but I'll read a couple. So I'm going to give you guys just like 3 minutes. See if you can think of, once again, it can be a little thing, but if you can think of a $1 million moment in your lives, and just type out the story real quick and share it in Slack. So I'll set the clock for 3 minutes, and then we'll come back together. I see the first one about the experience of being in a foreign city where you do not know the language. I think anyone who's experienced that, that's a pretty good go-to $1,000,000 moment. Skiing for the first time. DJing and having that first moment where things sync up. Ooh, I'm not going to read the full one, but I really like this one about having anxiety about driving and then pushing through and driving in spite of the anxiety and seeing that actually diminish. Oh, I like this. Deciding to join Lambda school. Yeah, I think that, I mean, I will say that my decision to go into programming boot camp was a big $1,000,000 moment for me too. It was something I was really nervous about, and I feel so much like I think about this a lot, especially during launch week, because it's hard. You know, it's been 5 years at this point, and it's hard not to feel like things feel really easy looking from where I am now. But it's like, wow, being with all you guys really reminds me of how scary and intimidating it was running a half marathon. I love these. I would just like do 2 hours of us sharing our $1,000,000 moments if I could. But unfortunately, we're going to have to move forward. If you guys want to continue to type and share, that's perfectly fine. Though I am about to put you guys into some breakout groups. So Zoom has a feature where I can put you in breakout groups, which I'm about to do. And what I want you to do is, we'll only have about 5 minutes for this as well, but in this group, go ahead and introduce yourselves. And then I want you guys to just talk about, what do you think are going to be the biggest challenges of Lambda School? So we'll talk, once we get back together, I'll talk about what I see as the biggest challenges, especially for part-time. But I want to give you guys a chance to just get to know each other and talk for 5 minutes about the biggest challenges in Lambda School. So let me put you in groups. Let's do about 5 people and just discuss your expected challenges. The one thing, just a warning about groups, is some of you might be in a group of 5, some of you might be in a group of 3. Hopefully no one's alone. So let me go ahead and do that. And if you end up with some TLs in your group, you guys can feel free to talk about literally what have been some of the challenges as well. So TLs are more than welcome to participate. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, you should be getting invitations to join rooms. Go ahead and accept that. Once again, the prompt is biggest challenge in Lambda School. Hi, I'm joining your room.
Hi.
Pressure's on for you guys to say really profound things. So what do you think are going to be the biggest challenges?
I'd probably say like concentrating sometimes is a little bit difficult, especially with like online class, because I see like little things and kind of stare off a little bit. So I think that'll be a little bit difficult, and like trying to like tune everything else around me out depending on like where I am taking the class.
I think feeling connected to the rest of the class is going to be difficult because it's all online.
You guys are a very non-talkative group, which is totally fine. But I do, when I like move through these breakout rooms, it'll be like one group will be like you guys, and the next group, like everyone will be talking over each other. It's really funny. All right, well, I'm gonna go sneak into some other groups, but feel free to connect and get to know each other for 2.5 more minutes.
Yeah.
Well, mazel tov.
Yeah, but that's the scary part, right? Just making sure there's time for everything and wanting to do well while you're there. But I think that's it. It's just planning it all.
What's up, Diandra?
Hey, I joined your room. You guys are a lot more
Cool.
chatty than the last room, which I like.
Oh, very quiet, huh?
Yeah. They're like, I think it's going to be hard to connect.
Well, you told people if they
Hard to connect,
didn't
like-
mute their mic, you were gonna call them out. So we were all quiet in here for a minute. We're not getting in trouble.
Kind of petrified to talk.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So we remember what I was saying about external responsibility and blame.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Deandra, I noticed that you have a Korg keyboard. What model is that?
It is the SV1.
I have a Chrome.
Nice.
Here at the house.
Yeah, they're good. When I was in high school, I had a Triton, which was pretty wonderful. This is like the opposite of that, because it's like, now we're just talking about keyboards, but it's meant to like
this is good.
Simulate the like analog organs and keyboards of the 60s and 70s, and it has a tube, so it's really nice.
Yeah, I was about to say it.
Goodness.
It's that model. It's got that nice tube warmth coming through.
Yeah. Luckily, I don't play out because it's heavy.
I'm over here, you guys are talking, and I'm like, I've got like a Logitech, so that's great.
Yeah.
It's Corsair over there. I'll figure it out.
All right, the breakout room time I think is officially done, so I'm going to bring everyone back.
Cool.
All right, remute.
All right, breakout rooms will close in 1 minute officially. All right, let's give it a minute for everyone to come back out of their breakout rooms. So yeah, I sat in on a couple of the rooms, and it's good to see you guys discussing. And to clarify, you are more than welcome to unmute yourselves once you're in breakout rooms. So I will kind of have people trickling back in for the next few seconds, but I want to talk about what I heard was all really good, challenges of time management, challenges of being in an online environment, and it's so easy to get distracted. It's hard to connect with others. So I think you guys are all thinking about pretty on-topic things, and we will, especially Wednesday and Friday of this week, talk about different ways to combat these challenges. So I do think that the online environment is probably the biggest challenge. And I think about this, it's certainly a challenge for me as an instructor, because I think the connecting is so important to learning and so much more difficult here. So it's dangerous territory because we do have to get through our material, but I want our class to be a place where we can joke around with each other, where we can take little diversions on weird topics. Same with Slack especially, the reactions and emojis in Slack are a nice lightweight way to connect. But I hope you guys feel like it's a place where you can also have discussions and explore different ideas. So with the online environment, there are challenges, and we're going to talk more about that later this week. But especially with the connection piece, it is kind of on all of us to not make this really stodgy, formal environment, but to be able to be there for each other and add lightness to everything, because it's hard. And without that human element, I think it becomes so much harder. So with part-time as well, there are a lot of challenges, and you guys, everyone's schedule is different, but I know a lot of you are working full-time. Plenty of you guys are working full-time and have a family and are doing Lambda school. So time management becomes critical for us in part-time, and we will talk about that more. So I do want to just generally say that I recognize that what you're doing is really tricky. Any sort of programming immersive is tricky, but doing something part-time online is like this added layer. And I have so much respect and admiration for you guys doing this. It's very different from what I did, which was in person, and also very hard and more of a time commitment, but we all had each other, and that made a big difference. So whatever we can do to create a community, I think is critically important. And as well, we're going to be talking a lot about time management, stress reduction, mindset, things like that over the next 2 days of launch, because that is completely necessary. So I hope you use these opportunities and breakout rooms and chances to share thoughts and stories as an opportunity to connect and be more part of this. Yeah. So, and if anyone has any thoughts on creating more of a community and how we can connect throughout this entire thing, totally open to that. All right. Well, we are about ready for our final topic of tonight, which is the ISA. I do want to check Slido and see if there are any questions. Mostly what we've talked about is not very questiony things, but I'll see if there's any questions in Slido, and then we will talk about the ISA. So let me share my screen again, and we'll see what's going on in Slido. All right, no questions, but I know that the ISA topic is one where there are usually lots of questions, so perfect. All right, final topic for tonight, the income share agreement. So I want to open this just by saying that I think this is one of the coolest parts of Lambda School. I really believe in this company. It's really exciting for me to work for a company I believe in, and one of the things I love about Lambda is this ISA. To me, this idea of we're student obsessed, or that we align our outcome with your outcome, that all sounds good on paper, but the ISA is, to me, this really tangible indication that we're willing to put the money where our mouth is, literally money in this case. So a lot of the times the way the ISA is talked about is this idea of you pay your tuition later. But I actually don't like to think of it this way. The way I think about it is that right now your tuition is being paid for by someone who already graduated Lambda School. So take a little moment of gratitude for out there is someone you'll never meet, a Lambda School graduate, and they're making monthly payments that are paying my paycheck and paying your tuition. So they're making my job and your experience here possible. These people who have already gone through this journey, these people who a year or 2 years ago were sitting where you were sitting thinking to themselves, oh no, what if I signed up for? Am I going to be able to handle this? Am I going to make it through it? They are having all the same doubts and fears as you, and now they're in the job making a paycheck, and a part of that is going back to Lambda school. On the flip side, we can also think about once you're graduating, I know I haven't personally had this experience because I didn't have an ISA, but you will have a piece of your paycheck being taken out, and that might be a little frustrating. But one thing that you can think of at that moment is, hey, I'm paying. Now you can think back to this moment and say, hey, there's a student who's just starting Lambda school, and I'm making that possible for them. So it really is a pay it forward type situation. All right, so a couple other things I want to say before we start the slide deck is we will be focusing on the US income share agreement. Most of you guys, this is the share agreement that you have signed, but if you are out of the country, you might have slightly different conditions. If you are a veteran, it's slightly different. We can't cover all of that, but everything should be covered in detail in training kit. And if you have any questions, you can reach out. So I'll try to go over the basics. I'll try and answer any questions. Sometimes when people have really edge casey questions about income share agreements, I'm not always the best person to ask, and it might be something I just tell you, you have to go to front desk. But I want to take as much time as I can to talk about this and make sure that you guys understand exactly what the terms of this are. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So, all right, this 20,000 is no longer applicable. So first of all, if you do want to pay upfront tuition, it is 30,000 at the moment. So 30,000 upfront. For the most part, we actually prefer the ISA, and there's a good chance you will pay less if you do the ISA. So I think most of you guys have already made this decision, but the ISA is a pretty good way to go. One note is that if you have signed an ISA, you cannot switch. So it's either ISA or upfront payments. You can't switch after the fact. And as mentioned, that if you're a veteran who came through Shift Pathways, the plan is going to be different. So unfortunately, this will not be applicable to you. All right, so the basics are the basic idea of the ISA is that it's not a loan. It's a percentage of your income down the road. And even though in some ways there's some similarities in that a loan is you're paying installments later on something, there's a few fundamental ways that this is different. It is a legally binding agreement, so you are going to be held to the terms of this agreement. And as mentioned, one of the reasons for the ISA is that it's a way of us really directly aligning your goals with ours. The only way Lambda is going to work for us financially is if you're getting good paying jobs after the fact. And we know that's what you're here for. So we wanted to set up the tuition model to align those two things together. All right. So the idea is that you will not start paying us until you have a tech job that pays $50,000 or more per year. Just to clarify this tech job thing, it's not necessarily a full stack job. It's any job in the tech field that pays $50,000 or more per year. So you will only be paying installments if this minimum condition is met. We'll talk more about some edge cases. If you are ever not in a tech job making $50,000 or more, you will not be paying us. So you'll be paying 17% of your income before tax. So 17% monthly will go to us. There is a repayment cap of $30,000. So if you hit this cap, that's a really good sign. That means you're making a lot of money. So if you are ever making so much money in the tech field that you would actually go over 30,000, we're going to cap it there. So if you repay us early because your salary is high enough, then you're finished. Otherwise, it's a 24-month term. So 17% for 24 months. Whatever that ends up being. So we're going to play with a little info tool later to show different scenarios. So it's 24 months of you meeting this criteria. There's kind of a couple examples over here that show a scenario where you might end up paying $20,000 versus a scenario where you might end up at the cap of $30,000. All right, let's go ahead and do that visual tool now. So we see that, let's say your salary is $20,000. You're not going to pay us. If your salary is $47,000, you're not going to pay us. But once you pass that threshold, the installment will be based off of your tuition. So or based off of your salary. So if you're at this minimum level of 50,000, we're getting about 700 a month. And in total, does it say in total what? No, it doesn't. That would be cool. I'm not sure what the total amount here would be. But notice that as we slide up, this changes. So if you were, that'd be pretty cool. If you're making 130,000 a year straight out, you'd be paying us a lot. But notice that actually your term would go down, because after 16 months, you would hit the cap and you would stop paying. Whereas, I think it's about 90,000 is where you'd still be on the 24-month plan. So yeah, good news. If you're making a ton of money, we get more money, but you're also making a ton of money. So that's exciting. So the amount you pay in tuition is going to change from person to person. That's really the idea. It's always going to be 17%. But if you're making enough, the 24-month term might actually be reduced. So let's talk about some edge cases. All right, deferment policy. So if you ever go below 50,000, so this won't kick into gear until you're above 50,000, but let's say you switch jobs and you go back below. So if you're ever making less than, if you're ever making, how did I get so far forward? Less than about 4,000 a month, you'll be placed into deferment status. So if you are unemployed for a time or making less, you will not be making those payments to us. So you don't have to worry about once the ISA starts, if some life change, maybe it's a unfortunate life change where your company goes under or you lose your job, but you're not going to be accountable for those payments to us. Or maybe it's an intentional thing where you actually decide to join a startup. And startups can be really cool, but sometimes you end up making less money because a company is at an early stage. So you would not be responsible for paying us while you're in deferment. However, your term will be extended. So even though it's a 24-month repayment term, it actually could be a lot longer than that. So what can happen is if you go into deferment for, let's say, 2 years, you're still responsible to us. So this 24 months is 24 months of repayment. So this is where it gets a little confusing, but it has to be 24 months of you actually meeting those minimum requirements and making payments. So even though it's a 24-month term, it could actually be up to 84 months of coming in and out of deferment. So it might take that long for us to repay, or for you to repay us. But the good news is that we're never going to be requiring money from you if you're not making 50,000 or more a year, and if you're not in the tech field. The final piece that's actually not mentioned here is if you end up in deferment for 5 years total, actually it's 60 months specifically. So if you are in deferment for 60 months, your ISA will actually be canceled. So that would be, let's say you're going in and out of deferment and the total amount of time in deferment adds up to 60, the ISA will actually be canceled. So that's a worst case scenario, or maybe not. Maybe you just end up in a different field than tech, and that's fine too. I guess that's kind of worst case scenario for us, but if you're happy, that's good. So just be aware that this will not be held over your head for the rest of your life. If you end up outside of tech, eventually this thing will expire. And if for some reason, maybe 10 years later, you ended up back in tech, where you're not going to be held accountable for this. So of course, what we want and what we're all hoping here is that you're going to end up in the tech field making great money with a great job that you love, and we'll get our money and you'll get your money, and we're going to set you up for that track. But just be aware that if things go wrong, if you end up taking a different path, you're not going to be paying Lambda School back. We only want to be paid if you're using what we taught you. Here's an example. I'm not going to go through that. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's say that you're, for 18 months, earning 50,000 or more, you'll be paying us. And then let's say that you work outside of tech for a while. You don't pay us. Then let's say you're back in tech, but maybe you're working for a startup and you're only making $40,000 a year, or sorry, $4,000 a month. I'm not sure what that adds up to a year. Simple math. But you're back in tech, you're making $4,000 a month, you're still not paying us. But then if you're back in tech, if you're still in tech and you're making more money, you'll pay us again for 6 more months. So notice that these 2 periods of paying us back add up to 24 months total, whereas this deferment period, you're not paying us. But so even though this is actually, I think 3 years, 4 years, this is about 4 years of time here. It's only 2 years of that 4 years that you're paying us installments. So yeah, it gets a little wordy and confusing. But the reason it's slightly convoluted is because it's actually really brilliantly designed to not screw you guys over. So yay for that. There is a refund policy. So if you withdraw in the first 4 sprints, so that's unit 1, your tuition or any installments will be returned. Once again, we're not trying to entrap you and extract your money. We want this to be mutually beneficial. So if you go through and you say, yeah, this tech field is not for me, you can withdraw. That's better for us than, because theoretically you could go through the whole program and then not work in tech, but why waste your time? Why waste our resources? So if you know this is not for you, you can withdraw and we will fully cancel your ISA or refund your tuition. However, after 4 sprints, at that point we've invested enough that you're going to become responsible for 40% of tuition. So once you pass this grace period, you're going to become incrementally responsible for more and more of tuition. If after 10 sprints, you're still enrolled, you're responsible in full. So once again, if you never work in the tech field, technically, and you have an ISA, you won't end up paying us, but I don't know why you would waste your time or our time on that. So if you do go through Lambda school, you're still on the hook for the ISA, but only if you meet those minimum requirements of working in tech, making $50,000 or more. Once again, think of your ISA as you're paying the tuition for a future student. It will begin on the last day of school, whether you withdraw or graduate, or if you get hired early, it begins then. So that's when it kicks into gear, when you get hired. But once again, even though the ISA starts on graduation day, that doesn't mean payments start. Payments start only after you are hired, making that $50K or more. And I believe that there is a 28-day grace period. So we know that you might be kind of struggling when you first get that job. So we do give you a little grace period before you'll be responsible. You should have already signed your ISA. If you haven't, please do that because you will not be allowed to start next week if you have not signed it. And it's all on leaf.org. Hopefully you have access to that. If you don't, I can share these links. So that is the ISA. There's usually a few questions about that. So let me hop over into Slido and see what we've got. Whew. All right, what if you're already making $50K or more per year in the tech field? Yep, so the ISA will kick into gear when we graduate or when you find a job post-Lambda. So you will not be expected to pay installments while you are enrolled. It's only once you graduate. If you happen to meet that requirement already, it will go into gear once you graduate. Okay, you signed the ISA and then received an email about shift pathways. My guess is we're going to work with you to sort that out. That is a little too specific for me to answer. So please reach out to front desk and try to get in contact with someone who can help you work that out. So that one's a little beyond my scope, unfortunately. This is a good question. Is ISA based on salary only or total compensations? Yeah, so this, I would say that in your specific case, it might be worth asking, but the deal is that if you are making $50K or more in a tech job, it's then a percentage of your total income. So let me give you an example of this. Let's say that you are a landlord. You own a rental property. So you make a portion of income based off of that rental property as well as your tech job. If you are making 50K or more just from your rental property, that's a pretty good situation. Maybe it's an Airbnb. But the ISA doesn't kick in. But if you are making 50K or more in tech plus additional income, it is actually a percentage of your total income that you're making. So as far as, things like, there are some confusing, like I'm not sure how, for example, investment income plays into that. So if you are in this situation, then I think it might be worth reaching out and getting a more specific answer. But it is your total income, not just your tech income. It's just that in order for the ISA to kick in, it has to be 50K more in tech. If you get a job before finishing the program, is there still a path to endorsement? Yes. So once again, in certain some people might be better at answering this than me. Usually when this happens, it's during Lambda X. And if that's the case, yeah, absolutely. If for some reason you got a tech job in the middle of, let's say, your labs or even earlier, I'm not sure what would happen then. So that I can't answer exactly, but yes, it's totally designed during Lambda X. If you get hired early, you'll still be able to get endorsed. Paired programming can be effective for a more human touch. That is true. But as it were, we are not doing much pair programming these days. Okay, is the endorsement still there if the ISA gets canceled after 5 years? That is an interesting question. My understanding is yes, but that might be worth confirming with someone else. So I apologize. I don't always know. You guys come up with such good questions. And I try to, every time I go through this, answer all the questions I didn't know the answer to, so I know them next time. But I believe yes, but that might be worth double checking with front desk. We only pay ISA if we make 50K, even if we cancel in the middle of the course, or it becomes a credit we have to pay over time. Another one I would want to double check with front desk. So my understanding is that if you drop out of the course, or I know that if you are removed from the course, so if you are kicked out, you are responsible for it, I believe, regardless. And I think the same is true if you withdraw early, but I'm not sure about this one. So that'd be worth double checking. The reason why that is the case is because we want you to take this seriously. And I think it might also depend on the reason for withdrawal. This is one that I will make sure I have the answer to moving forward, but I really don't want to misspeak and I'm not positive about it. So I would reach out to front desk to get exact details on this one. I'm not sure what RE is. It is one monthly payment for the ISA. So it will be your responsibility to budget accordingly because it is a once a month thing. All right, any final ISA questions? Sorry, I'm making notes of the things I didn't know the answer to. Give me a second. All right. Oh, wait. Can you pay more than 17% a month? I don't believe it. I'm pretty sure you can't. Once again, I'm not positive on this, though you can certainly budget accordingly. I would think you'd be able to, but yeah, I'm not positive on that one. So I will put that one in my notes too to make sure I have the answer to that one in the future. All right, well, we've got 15 minutes left, but I think I'm gonna let you go a little early. Let me just say a couple final things before we call it a night. So the first thing I want to do is just remind you guys what is going to be happening the rest of this week, especially now that we have the language to talk about it. So tomorrow, you have 2.5 hours of project time. So you should be coming here during this time to work on tonight's project, and I'll show you where that is in just a moment. One note is that the projects for launch are a lot more easygoing than the projects once we start next week. So chances are you will finish early. You're welcome to either leave or use the extra time to get ahead on launch. So once again, the time commitment and attendance is pretty loose during Lambda launch. So we do recommend you show up during this time because TLs will be available for support and it'll help you practice the Lambda schedule, but we're not going to be monitoring it. And if you need to be late or do it at a different time, you don't need to notify anyone. You can just do that. At the end, you will have a module respective form that you need to submit. So that's what tomorrow will look like. So there's no guided lecture. I won't be here, but it will be your responsibility to get the assignment finished for Lambda launch. So, all right. And then Wednesday is going to look similar to tonight, but will be much more on the same schedule as regular Lambda. So you'll have half an hour of prep time. The guided, by the way, this is all in Mountain Time because that's what I'm in. Guided project will start at 4:30, which is 5:30 my time. And then at the end, you'll have half an hour to start early. Thursday will look just like Tuesday. Friday will look just like Wednesday. Your final assignments, you'll just be completing on your own time, which is maybe another reason to get ahead if you can. So just a reminder, there's a lot of content we covered tonight. I will say that the next 2 nights will be a bit more interaction and discussion and less like, here's a bunch of slides. But training kit is available to you guys. Everything we talked about tonight is on there. You hopefully know how to ask questions. In fact, I will ask you, if you are stuck on something, what is step 1? So if you are stuck and confused about something, what is step 1 to getting an answer? Not team lead. Not Slack. 20-minute rule. Yep. So, and I will say a little less than 20 for launch, but try to find the answer yourself. You probably won't be able to Google things for launch since it's so Lambda specific, but look on training kit, maybe look at an old video, try and find the answer yourself. All right, if you cannot find the answer, what is step 2? Step 2 would be Slack. So post publicly in Slack. If you do not get a response in Slack, what is step 3? Or if you don't, no one knows. Step 3 would be your TL. In this case, you don't have your formal TL, but there are a few TLs who are helping out. So, and if you don't know who they are, now might be a good time for those TLs who are hanging out here to introduce yourselves. So you could reach out to some of them, but launch is a little more hazy. All right. If you can't find a TL or your TL doesn't know, what would be your 4th step if you're stuck on something? Yes, cry first and then come to me specifically. Yep. So feel free to reach out to me, but please go through all those other steps first. And if your question is non-technical, where would you go? Front desk, exactly. All right. Well, that is all we have for night 1. So you're welcome to get started early. Oh, by the way, actually, this is important. You will always be able to find your homework assignment under project at the bottom of training kit. So under Welcome to Lambda, you'll see LL Module 1 project. This is always where you will find your assignment. So this one is, they're just in these Google Docs. So you have some writing assignments, a few things to watch, just some fun stuff to do. So go ahead and work through this. It will probably take you less time than 2.5 hours. So feel free to get started on that tonight, or if you want to just call it a night and come back to it tomorrow, that's totally fine too. All right, let's see if there's any final. Yes, TLs are not available beyond class time. So that's especially true during launch. Sometimes TLs are available, but it's kind of at their discretion, but you cannot expect them to be available beyond class time, or there's also after hours time. So complete the project, and then you will fill out the retrospective form at the end of the night. That's tomorrow's class. Yes, exactly. All right. That's all. I will get these videos uploaded as soon as I can and post links to them in Slack. I will see you guys on Wednesday. So thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you then. Have a great night.